we are going to make a Node.js with Express application where we are going to use a post method for our login and retrieve a unique or multiple users. So having said that, we're going to understand how Node.js became so popular. Back in the days, JavaScript was client-side rendering, which means you could do some trickery on your UI and changes something to looks more asynchronous, but you couldn't do anything on your backend. Most of the time you would need to choose such languages as PHP or Java or even C Sharp. So when the guys from Node.js, they could customize the V8 engine from Chrome to make it possible, they basically opened the doors for everyone who already knew JavaScript to create also backend language on it. So this is why it became so popular. And Express, which is a library that we are going to use, will help us in making everything related to consumption of data easier, because we'll handle for us all the API routes and how to get the JSON from our body, everything. So let's get started. I already have this scaffolding code because of my repo. You can find me as Pedro on GitHub, and then you're going to see a public repository called Node Express over there. But if you're just starting, you just need to create a server.js folder and type npm init-y, and it will generate for you this package.json and package.lock.json and the node modules as well. Cool. Now, first things that we are going to do is install npm install express. Once we install it, you're going to notice that here on package.json you're going to have as your dependencies express. If your npm is higher than 5, you don't need to use anymore npm install express --save. If your npm is higher than 5.0.0, this is already by default on your system, so you don't need to use that anymore. And now let's get to the code part, which is the more interesting one. So first thing that we are going to do on our server.js is import our libraries. How do we do that? It's pretty easy. We are going to use const express equals require express. And this is going to import all the express functionalities into that variable, which we're going to be using later on. So the next variable that I'm going to import as well, which we're not going to use right now, but we are going to use in the future, is a body parser, which is very important. So let's install that as well. Const body parser requires body parser. Body parser already came installed with Express, so you don't need to worry about doing npm for it. And here we use const app equals express, which is make the instantiation of Express now available for our app, and with it we can just use app.use body parser.json. This will make our body, which come in a JSON format, available for us, because otherwise we would get a very long object like object3, and without it would be a little bit harder. Not that harder, but would be a little bit more messy for our eyes. So cool. First thing that we are going to do is create an endpoint here. Now we already have all our setup done. So first thing that I'm going to do is create a route where we can get all the users. So how it works, I'm going to do app.get /users, and here I'm going to have a function over here, guys. It's like anonymous function, which we call, which basically is going to receive our request and our response. And here I put curly brackets, hit enter, and when the user hit on this page, I'm going to use res.json, which is response.json, and then I can return like success colon true, the message, successfully got users. And I can even retrieve some users, like users mock user data. So I can even create over here a variable which is const mock user data equals array of object, which I'm going to put 2 users over here, and their name is going to be Mark, the other one name is going to be Follow. So when our user hits on this URL using the get method, it will retrieve the mock user data and the successfully got users. So nice that we created our first endpoint, but that's not going to work. It's not going to work because we forgot one last thing, which is our main configuration, which is listening to the port. As we're creating an API endpoint, we need to specify which port our app is going to be listening to. So in our case, I'm going to use app.listen. As you could notice already, app involves everything, because when you you make the instantiation of Express to app, you can use different functions, which is like body parser, and implement on your app using the use method. You can get, you can post, all the methods for communication, and also you can listen. So here for listen, I'm going to put port 8000, and here create anonymous function just to print for us server is running. So console.log server is running. So nice. When we start our server, we're going to see console.log server is running, and then when we go to get users, we are going to receive all these mock data users. So let's start it. As I said, we have two ways of starting this file. We can use node server.js or npm start, which you will run the same way. Before that, make sure you have node-v to check the version of your node, to check if you had node on your system, and also npm-v, which by far I believe you already have because you're following me, right? So I'm going to clear, I'm going to type npm start, and now our server is running. So we have two possibilities of checking our app. The first one is going to be checking our localhost, column 8000 / users, and now we receive over here success, true message, successfully got users, and username Mark, and another user Ruffalo, where you could pick on your UI as users dot, and then you could iterate through to get the name and the other username. Or another possibility is a client that I use on as an extension, which is the third Thunder client, which is a REST API client. So I just press Ctrl+Shift+P, new request, and here I can put localhost column 8000 / users. We always need to be aware, guys, of what method do we have here and what method we are putting here. Otherwise, if that was a post method, we wouldn't be able to get because we were using the get. Just have a little bit of attention over here because this sometimes can trigger you because you have a functional function that works, but you're trying and doesn't work because you're using the wrong method. So cool. Here receives the same thing, a little bit prettier. And one thing that I like about using the Thunder client, they have these curly brackets over here with a code snippet that we can use for JavaScript axios, as here we can choose for JavaScript fetch like this, or we can use for everything else like C# and so on. Cool. Now we are going back to our code and we are going to get the users, but at this time we are going to get users with a specific ID. So to get that, we are going to use another new feature, app.get /users, and the feature here is very simple, but you're going to notice how powerful it is. We use the slash again, we put column ID. This column ID will receive the ID as a parameter. Sometimes if you want to be really specific about it, you can specify that you're just willing to receive a number or characters or a regex sort of like function. You can specify what kind of value of parameter you're expecting on this. In this case, it's going to be just the name, and it can claim everything, or number, or string, or anything. So here I'm going to put comma function. Here I'm going to put the request, the response, and now I'm going to show you how it works to get the parameters. So this is why we use the body parser, because it makes everything easier for us now. We use console.log, and we can just type rec.params.id. So now we are already receiving our ID, and if you check over here, and I put backslash and 10, I just need to restart the server, npm start. You can see over here 10. If I change to 8, and so on. But before doing this and going further, I'm going also to put a response, right? So res.json, and here I'm going to put success through message got one user, and also I'm going to put the user rec.params.id, and once I save it, I just restart this, npm start, then I can over here check different kind of users we're getting as a response. So if I change over here, let me oh Jesus, just let me hustle over here. Yeah, if I change over here to Pedro, got one user, Pedro, it'll work anything like numbers, name, and so on. Now that we already learned how to get a multiple users and how to get a one specific user receiving a parameter, we are going to make a login page. But a login, usually we don't use the get method, right? Because you can get some injections on your code, because using URL, it's not safe because the browser can't encrypt the URL. You just make the spacing and these things, but you cannot treat, right? So here I'm going to put an app.post, and now it comes our login method slash login function rec response, and now I'm going to create a username and a password and a mock username and password just to make the validation, because when you create a login method, you want to check if the user is the user on your database, right? So in the case that we're not using database, I need to create at least a mock username and password to check if they're the same. So my const username is going to be equal to the rec.body dot username, and my const password is going to be equals to the rec dot body dot password. What I'm doing here first is making the username and the password available to these variables, and then I'm going to create the const mock username equals to James, and const mock password, which is going to be 1 2 3 4. And now I'm going to make the conditional if our username is equal, and then could be like this or could be like this, because here checks the typo of the variable, but as this is like a very simple and normal function, we don't need to put that. Mock username, and so here we want to check if the username is equal to our mock username, the username that we're going to receive as a request from the body is equal to the mock username that we have, and the password is equal to the mock password that we have over here. So if they both met the criteria, what we are going to do is give a response.json where we say success true, and we give the message as password and username match. And sometimes our server also gives a token, right? So we just retrieve some random token like yes. And if it doesn't meet this criteria, if the username is different from the mock username or the password is different from the mock password, we're going to put on our conditional else res.json success false, message password and username do not match. Now that we already have implemented, just let's check how it looks like. Everything's right, so let's run it again. npm start. Here I'm going to use the method post. I'm going to use the login on our body. I'm going to choose JSON format. I'm going to put the curly brackets and name equals to name, username equals to James, and the password equals to 1 2 3 4. So when I hit send, we receive the 200, success true, password and username match, and our token. If I change here for Pedro and I hit send again, success false, password and username does not match. I think this is a very brief tutorial, guys. I didn't want to make very complex, because if you're starting and just as a beginner, as I was one day, I think this is the best way to understand how it works. And now we could also implement over here like passport.js, which is a library where you can use auth authentication, which could make a lot more safe or app, because we wouldn't rely on ourselves, we would rely on auth system. And also integration of a database like Postgres or MongoDB, which is available through installing another library using like npm install MongoDB or npm install Postgres. And even all the libraries and frameworks available, it's just a matter, like, once you understand this, everything else is just a matter of choosing and aggregating over here. It doesn't make that much difference. It's just a matter of adding more extra functionalities, where once you have the bare bones, everything else is a lot easier. I hope this video was helpful. If you like it, give a thumbs up and give a subscribe, and if you want to give some feedback about it, what could be better, or things that you want to see on my next video, just let me know. Peace.